Hi, today we're looking at bookkeeping and accounting tips, and this is specifically for trades, tradies, people who work with their hands. Now, the first thing to keep in mind is that your bookkeeping matters more than you realize. When you're first starting out, you're just like, yeah, I'll get the job done, I won't worry about the books, but it catches up with you. So you want to learn to get your bookkeeping right the first time, and you want to do it in a way that doesn't cost you time, it saves you time. So getting efficient at your paperwork means little things like maybe on Thursdays or Fridays, once a week, you pay all your bills, and you want to have a systematic way of keeping track of how you invoice everyone. Some business are missing out on invoicing people. And let's think about it. If you only invoice 95% of people and then 5% you miss invoicing them, that's a huge amount of money you don't have that should be in your bank account. Another thing is when you invoice people, you want to do it in a way that saves you time, but is quick. Now, another thing is we really want to separate our personal and our work bank accounts. Now, most of us know this, but if you're starting out, this might be new. So I've got a couple of cards. So one's for my personal bank account when I go and buy myself a coffee. Another one's for one of my businesses that I run. And then I've got another business that I run. So I need a couple of bank accounts, because what that means is that when I make that transaction, it goes to the correct accounting system, and it saves me a lot of time. A bit of effort to set up, but then it's good. Also, you want to know what your break-even formula is, and that's for every year, month, and week. Now, your break-even formula is probably different from what it was a year ago. You might have only had 2 staff on a year ago, whereas now you might have 5, so you'll have a very different break-even formula. Your break-even formula matters because it guides you in the right direction. When you know what your break-even is, then you will end up pushing towards high-margin work instead of low-margin work, and that's important. And you'll also won't get caught short later in the year, particularly around things like cash flow. So cash flow is basically knowing how much will be in your account on a particular date in the future. So a month from now, do you know how much is going to be in your bank account? And if you don't, that says you've got a cash flow issue of you're not tracking things. Now, we need to be setting money aside because the big bills come and they hit us like a sledgehammer if we don't. Things like paying your quarterly BAS or your PAYG, or your quarterly superannuation. If you've got a few staff, your superannuation is actually going to be quite a high cost. And you need to know what dates they're due, and you need to make sure that money is in there so you don't run into serious grief. And if you're running a trade sort of business, you think, why am I doing this? And that's valid. Why are you doing this? You got into this work because you love building stuff or making stuff or fixing things, and here you are doing paperwork. Well, if you need to, pay someone else to do it for you so that you can spend more time on the tools. Now, do you need a bookkeeper or do you need an accountant? Because people often ask me that question. Most small businesses need both, and there's a reason for that. A lot of people give all their paperwork to their accountant at the end of the financial year, and then their accountant charges them the earth, because an accountant's going to charge you about $300 an hour. Now, most of that work the accountant does could actually be done by a bookkeeper for somewhere between about $60 and $100 an hour. We charge about $70 an hour for most work. At the moment, it's a lot cheaper to pay $70 an hour than to pay your accountant $300 an hour to do the same work. So a bookkeeper gets all your accounting sorted and ready to go. So all the accountant has to do is plug in a few numbers into their magic software. And then the bookkeeper's done the real work, but the accountant does the work of minimizing excess tax so that you don't pay tax on anything you shouldn't be paying tax on. They're your friend, but don't give them unnecessary amounts of work because they cost the earth. Definitely need both an accountant and a bookkeeper. And if you get yourself in a spot where you're financially stuck, because a lot of tradies do this, they haven't kept their eye on their cash flow, their bookkeeping is not up to date, and then suddenly they have a big bill and they're looking at the account going, oh, they don't have money to pay it. Well, there's a couple of things you can do. First thing is, have you chased down all the people who owe you money? That's your overdues. And then get on the phone with them and be like, nicely, hey, I noticed you're overdue. It's time for us to get that bill paid. Is there anything you need from me? And sometimes they'll just say, yeah, I need another invoice sent. And sometimes they'll just be a nightmare to work with. But whatever, chase down those overdues. That's the first spot to look. And make sure you have invoiced everyone if you're running out of cash, because often that's where your money's disappeared to. It just hasn't been invoiced. Also, if you get really stuck, you can talk to the ATO. You can say, look, I'm going to have trouble paying this next bill. And the first time you call the ATO, you'll find they're fairly reasonable, fairly friendly, open to helping you out by delaying some payments. The second time you call them about the same issue, they won't be so open to being helpful. They'll be less than fun to work with. So they're not your first port of call, but they are a port of call. Another thing you can do is you can pay your suppliers. Like when people who you owe money to, you can just give them a call and say, look, I'm stuck until the 20th of next month, and by then I'll have been paid in abundance? Is there any way I can operate with you on credit until then? Now, if you've got a track record of always paying your suppliers on time or close to on time, they're going to be happy to give you some sort of credit, because if you go out of business, well, they don't make sales. So that's another place that you can look when you're financially stuck. Also, don't treat our business like an ATM. Okay, what happens is we look at our bank account, we're like, whoa, it's up to 90K, great, I'll take out half of that. It's like, hold on, before you take half that money out, that's not all profit. You've got expenses that need to come out. Okay, so you need to know how much is going to come out. You might realize that, oh, of that 90K in your bank account, 65K is already accounted for within the next month in bills. So it really only gives you 35K to play with. So be really aware that your business is not an ATM. We don't take money out of it because we feel like it. We take money out of it at particular strategic times when it's safe to take money out of it. And the other thing is, your partner needs to know that as well. That's not just a you thing. Now, if you're having trouble with your bookkeeping, you need a hand. That is Joel, and that's me. As you can see, we're good mates, and we also love helping people out with their bookkeeping. There's our contact details if it's helpful. A good bookkeeper is just wanting to be helpful, so find someone who's helpful. Now, big pro tip for your bookkeeping is you want to invoice immediately. Okay, the very same day you do the work is the same day you want to invoice. Now, a lot of guys who are in the trades, that they think, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to go home and just relax. And that's fair enough that you want to relax. But somehow you've got to get that invoice out today. There's a reason for that. If you do the work today and give them the invoice today, one, it's off your plate. It's sorted. Two, people know that you're serious about getting paid because they know the work was done today and they got the invoice today. Even better if you've got, say, 7-day terms or less of when you expect to be paid, because what that tells people is, hey, I was serious about doing my work for you. Your job is to get me paid, and be serious about that. Now, the longer you leave it before you invoice people, the more likely it is you'll miss some invoicing, which is just devastating for your bank account. Or people will think, oh, he can't be that serious. He hasn't invoiced me for the last month, and when he finally does invoice me, oh, I'll get around to it. You know, it's not a good way to get paid quickly. In business, you want to be paid as soon as you can, because, you know, the bills you have to pay, they're not going to wait for you. You have to pay them, so you want that invoicing out and you want that money in your account. Now, if you're someone who doesn't want to do paperwork every day, get a bookkeeper, get them to do your invoicing for you so you don't have to think about it. Overdues, once things start getting overdue, we got a problem, okay? Best way is to not let them get too overdue. So let's say that you have 7-day terms. You expect to be paid within 7 days of doing the work. Well, if it gets to day 10, that needs to be at least, at bare minimum, a text and a phone call to the person going, hey, here's your invoice again. I notice you haven't paid yet. Is everything okay? And then if it gets to day 14, that's 7 days overdue. It's got to be a phone call. Now, you might not feel like making that phone call, and it might also be a bad use of your time, because you can earn a lot more money by being on the tools than you can by finding your overdues. So that's where you might get your bookkeeper to phone up and just check in with people, just remind them, because it's a bit like the saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You know, it's like that person who is owing you money, they might owe money to 10 people, but if only 2 of them are chasing them up, they'll pay those 2 first. And you want to be one of those people chasing people up when they're overdue. Super important. Don't overlook it. It will hurt you more than almost anything else as you grow your business. Now, I love making these videos for you. If you haven't already, click like and click subscribe. And what that does is it makes it so that YouTube shows this to other people. And by subscribing, you get more videos like this in the future. Now, payroll, super important to get this right. When you're first starting out, and you might only have 1 employee, and you can work out how much you owe people using a good old-fashioned calculator. But as time goes on, you get more staff, things get way more complex very quickly. And that's where even just paying people, it's a time-consuming thing. And say Xero software or your accounting software, it's got ways that you can quickly and efficiently pay people. As well as that, it's going to calculate for you how much tax they should be paying, how much you should be withholding from their pay and sending to the ATO. And then even more importantly, again, is how much superannuation they're owed. Because honestly, when it comes to superannuation, if you miss the mark by that much, you get punished so badly. So make sure you're spot on with your superannuation. And the best way to prevent any of these dramas is to have good software, like say Xero software set up, and say your payroll. It should just be your bookkeeper gives you the file once a week. It might have taken them an hour or so to work it out, who's owed what. but they just give you a file that takes you 3 minutes to upload into your internet banking. Easy. And then you have to think about it. Xero, people keep asking me why use Xero. It's because it's the best software. In my opinion, it's by far the best software. It just works and it's streamlined and it saves you money. It saves you money because if you get a cheaper, rubbishy version of software, then it comes to tax time, your accountant's going to charge you more because the software didn't do the work for them. They have to do more of the work. Use Xero, and especially don't use a spreadsheet. Honestly, I know a guy who's been operating a business for about 10 years. He does his accounting on a spreadsheet. In other words, he pays his accountant big bucks to clean up the mess at the end of the financial year. Shouldn't be like that. Also, one more thing that's really helpful, DIY bookkeeping. You see people doing DIY jobs in their backyard and you shake your head. Well, it's the equivalent of that when we do our own bookkeeping, because you're not a bookkeeper. You're a guy or a roofer, whatever you're good at. That's your craft. That's what you're good at. Every second you spend doing bookkeeping is a second you're not spending on the tools. You're not generating money. Give the bookkeeper the job of doing the bookkeeping and you do the job of doing the real work. And if you don't have someone already lined up and you're a tradie who needs some bookkeeping done for you, well, that's Joel, that's myself. As you can see, we're pretty down to earth guys, and we're happy to chat up with you on the phone or on Zoom, completely free of charge for the first, usually takes about 15, 20 minutes to work out what exactly do you need, because you can't get a bookkeeper to do your work unless you know what you need done, and we can help you out with that. And then you can choose to use us or choose to use someone else. If there's anything else I can do to be helpful, get in touch. We love helping you out. It's a pleasure to help. And remember to like and, of course, subscribe.